Hi, this is Lisa Loree, the Rebel Ballerina. In today's show, I'm going to talk about uh, a book that was extremely instrumental for me making the changes that I needed to in my life. And I really hope that you'll find this book helpful for yourself as well. It's part of who I am now and what I am talking about and how I'm trying to help other people be able to move on in their lives and find incredible joy and fun and excitement. And I really hope you'll join me to find out this incredible information. Welcome to the Rebel Ballerina Show, where we learn to live a kick ass rebel life. I'm your host, Lisa Loree, the Rebel Ballerina. There's no farting around in this show, just straight up fun. But if your ears are sensitive, go ahead and move along. If you want a truly kick-ass life, well, then here we go. Hello, and welcome to the Rebel Ballerina Show. I'm here again and just wanted to chat about some really important things. In the last episode, we talked about how there's been a lot of information over the last 10 or so years about people who are they are takers, manipulators, exploiters, those types of people who we really want to avoid. And many of us have had to learn that the very, very hard way. And like I was kind of amazed. I thought that that was rather an anomaly dealing with that. Or you just hear about other people struggling with someone, we just call them assholes, you know? It's just, yeah, he's an asshole, or she's an asshole, or she's a bitch, whatever. But to understand now that there's a whole category, if you will, of that type of person, and they follow a certain set of traits, it's pretty amazing. It's as if there's a book written and they follow that book. Well, there's the other side of it, which is what I really wanted to focus on now that we understand who those people are. It's understanding then who am I and who are we for those of us who stand in contrast to that, those of us who are the givers and the um, empaths, people who want to keep the peace, non confrontational, those of us who just are nice. We're nice people. And there is a category for us too. Didn't know that at the time and didn't understand that being nice could be so costly. So what's behind all of the niceness that it becomes costly? What is it that drives nice to be exploited and manipulated? Why is that even allowed? That's the real question. It's not why does that happen, because it's pretty simple. An exploiter sees a nice person and exploits them. I mean, there you go. But why does that happen? Why do we allow that to happen? And a lot of times it's very subtle, and that's part of the problem. I don't know of very many people who are of that narcissistic type of personality having any traits of taking, manipulating, and exploiting. I don't know any of them who come straight up and say, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Yes, I'm an exploiter. So, let's have coffee and see how I can totally ruin your life." That doesn't happen. They're not going to come right out and say that. It's through time and different situations where you kind of start wondering, something seems a little off here, or something's a little wrong, but I can't pinpoint it. Or maybe you can't. Maybe it's pretty overt, but you feel like, well, give him another chance because maybe they're just having a bad day and that sort of thing. That happens frequently. In my case, there was this huge amount of, now what I know is love bombing, total affection, attention, flowers, poetry, little notes left on the windshield, at the very, very beginning. And that makes you feel like, wow, this guy really likes me. And that's pretty cool, without understanding that there was a serious ulterior motive to that. That wasn't just to be fun and appreciative of me and uplifting of me. Not really. On the outset, that's what it looks like. But the motive was simply to capture me, basically. It was a trap. That's really what that is. It's a trap. But who would know that until you're in it? And that's the problem. So, this journey that I've been on for the last 10 years has really been eye-opening to my kind of person. First, I had to understand who I was dealing with to begin with. And that, like I said, has become very well known, almost to the point where it's gotten ridiculous. And if someone doesn't agree with you or rubs you the wrong way in some way, shape, or form, people are calling anybody and everybody a narcissist anymore. And that's not true. That's going overboard. There are some people, though, who really do exhibit these traits, like on a consistent basis. I mean, we all have the whole spectrum of traits within us. Absolutely. And some might even say, I'm a narcissist, or I have narcissistic traits because I'm a performer. And so I like to be in front of people and I enjoy dancing. And now I enjoy speaking because I have something valuable I want to offer and I don't want to hold it back. But, excuse me, that can come across as being narcissistic. But it's the consistent exploitation, manipulation, and taking of others. Those are like the three top factors of determining who a person really is. Now, on the other side of that is the fawn, like I talked about yesterday. So I've discovered this term, fawn, through a fantastic author, psychologist, Pete Walker, and his book, Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. The cool thing is that you're never really alone. And I know I felt like I was extremely alone. And yes, when we are dealing with someone who's an exploiter, the taker, usually there's isolation that does happen. So yeah, we're going to feel more alone than what we should, for sure. For instance, like I said, my sister and her husband and even their two boys, even when they were little, did not like my ex. They didn't want to be around him. He was controlling. He would boss them around in their own home when we would be visiting. I didn't really recognize that, or he would do it when I wasn't there. And so there were a lot of instances where his personality was really showing who he is. And I either didn't recognize it or I chose not to recognize it at some times. She is the one that turned me on to someone online, Richard Grannon, who was the first person that I listened to on YouTube about these narcissistic traits. And it was the first time I realized, oh my gosh, there's this whole pattern or list, if you will, of these traits. And it was listening to him, he's the one that brought up Richard Grannon. I mean, Richard Grannon is the one that brought up Pete Walker, the author and psychologist of this book, Complex PTSD. And I grabbed a hold of that book. I ordered it and scoured through it, and I treated it um, like a Bible, if you will. I went through it with highlighter, made notes. I was dumbfounded at how well this guy was describing me. Couldn't believe it. I was like looking around. Has he been following me? I mean, are there cameras somewhere that he's been watching and then describing who I am and my the way I present and things like that and what I'm going through? How does he know this? Right? That was such a weird thing to be watching my life or reading my life on these lines by someone I didn't even know. I had no idea that there's this category, the fawn. Again, not the fawns as in, hey, from Happy Days, though I love that character. But no, the fawn response pattern, life pattern, which is what puts us in that state of wanting to be people pleasers. And we want to do anything and everything at all cost to keep the peace or to preempt a problem, to not have to walk on eggshells, to make sure everyone is happy. Usually it develops into something that it goes to the extent of we do these things at our own expense. And there's where the problem is. The problem is not of being nice and being kind and being giving and helpful. Those are good traits that we should hope that everyone in humanity has. Unfortunately, the takers and such, they don't, they might, but it's all going to come with strings. It's all going to come with some kind of motive that is not pure. But us givers, we can have pure motives of being giving and kind and understanding. And I know plenty of others that we just genuinely enjoy being that way. However, what I learned from Pete Walker was that this fawn response is something that comes from fear. So then it's like, okay, well, then that means I'm giving and being kind and those good things basically out of fear. I find that to be astonishing. I thought I was just being nice, but the motivation there a lot of times is out of fear. Now, if you're holding the door open for someone, that's probably not going to be based out of fear. That's just an act of kindness. But when you have to reconfigure your life and who you are, and you have to give up so much of yourself to make everyone else happy, there's just this weird pressure that someone's going to be disappointed, someone's going to be unhappy, and life isn't going to go very well under those circumstances. That is the driver for the fawn response, the fawn trauma response pattern. That's where it comes from. So it's a matter of being able to figure out, okay, I want to be kind, I want to be giving. I don't want to come across as mean or selfish, but we've been conditioned, thoroughly conditioned, not just by our parents. We've been conditioned by friends, neighbors, other family members, could be siblings. We've been conditioned through society at large even religion, teachers at school, teachers, coaches, anybody and everybody who's had any kind of authority over us when we were small children, they have that kind of influence where it's very easy to condition a small child to do as I say. And not to say that we should have a whole bunch of disobedient children. That's not what I'm getting at, but there's a better way to go about it, for sure. However, the narcissistic type people, they don't really care if there's a better way to go about it. And so that's where this really stems from. There are some who may actually have had very pure intentions. As a kid, you're being told this, that, and the other, this is how you should behave, and those sorts of things. Yes, of course, there is some pure motive there. But when you grow up in a home, like in my case, I was totally neglected by my dad. Just he just didn't want to have anything to do with me after I was around 2 because I wasn't a cute little toddler anymore. I was getting much more mischievous probably. And very much a jabberwacky, as my mom used to call me. So I talked a lot, apparently. And I was not a cuddly child, cuddly person. I'm still not that much of a cuddly person. And not that I don't like to give a hug or receive a hug, I just don't think about it, which trying to work on that because sometimes it's just absolutely appropriate. So I had this overarching feeling of not being good enough. The neglect from my dad gave me a very clear message. Even though he did not say, I don't give a crap about you, he never said that, but he behaved that. And the neglect was enough for me to realize okay, this guy who is supposed to be my protector doesn't like me, doesn't want to have anything to do with me. Well, that makes a very dangerous situation for a small child. What am I supposed to do with that? I have to rely on this person, right? But he's not in my corner. And that's scary. It's a really scary place to be. Or if you have children who are being constantly berated with terrible, terrible words, literally being told that they are worthless. I mean, Pete Walker describes what he went through. Oh my gosh. I I I cannot even fathom saying the things that were said to him to a small child. I can't even imagine saying it to an adult. I mean, except maybe my ex, of course. But nevertheless, it's absolutely frightening the amount of people who have suffered at the hands of their parents or other, again, anybody in authority because of their own shortcomings. And on then it goes until you find a way out and a way to break this chain. And that's why I'm doing this now. I want to help break this chain because we don't have to live like this. And that is exactly what I'm now talking about. We don't have to live like this. Unfortunately, as adults, we're already steeped in it pretty thoroughly by the time we reach adulthood. And then, of course, like in my case, I was 50 by the time I got away and started this whole process of going, what the hell? What is this all about? Why should I even be here? Why should I have to endure any more of this? Why not just get off the planet? And then making these incredible discoveries and going, ooh, wow. There is so much to learn and understand that could be dramatically life changing. And I'm living it, because where I once was absolutely depressed and not even wanting to be here, now I have tons of joy. And part of that process was what I learned from Pete Walker. It was amazing. I literally scoured through, I went back through that book, I don't know how many times, and I cried, I laughed, mostly cried, as I was discovering who I actually am, how I ended up giving myself away so completely that I didn't have anything left for me. So it was a very, very revealing time for me. Important, really important. The really important thing about that is because then you can do something about it. It's like, well, okay, so how I got into this thing was because of this conditioning of being told, or for some, literally told, but for me, told through behavior, how I wasn't worth my dad's time. I wasn't good enough. Like, anytime he did say something to me, it was extremely rare that there was anything good. Usually, the conversation, if you want to call it that, because there wasn't a lot of conversation, it was just him saying how I failed, how I didn't accomplish this well enough, how my grades aren't good enough, how I didn't clean something good enough. It was all of that kind of thing. So there was a negative feel to literally anything that came out of his mouth. And it wasn't a conversation. It was just a, you're this, you're that, you're not living up to, you're whatever it was at the moment. And that's a crushing thing to a small child. It's devastating. So to have him present in the house, but not present as a person who really had my back, was difficult. And he was very much against me becoming a ballerina. At one point, my parents were separating. Well, no, they hadn't separated yet, but at one point my dad was complaining about all the money he had spent on my hobby. And my mom said, "No, this is not a hobby. This is her career. This is what she has been working toward and is really good at and needs to continue. And this is what she wants to do with her life. And that's it. It's not a hobby." And I don't want to pay for these lessons anymore. It's just too expensive and blah, 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 blah. And she's the one that had my back. And she said, "Okay, fine. Then I'll divorce you and I will pay for the lessons out of my half of our estate." That never happened, thankfully, as in, it didn't have to come to that. He continued to pay, but she made a really big point. And he's never liked the fact that I wanted to be a ballerina, and mainly because it wouldn't make any money, is what he was saying. Now, dancers don't get paid a lot, I will say. It's very discouraging for the amount of training that we put in as elite athletes. We get next to nothing compared to our other elite athlete counterparts, like any NFL, NBA, um, Major League Baseball players. We get not a lot. And it's really not a good thing. For sure. And I understand. I understand that he might be concerned, but there's a difference between being concerned and being flat out against someone's dreams. There's a huge difference there. Concern means, okay, let's figure out a way to make this work to where you can earn more money if that's the problem, which it was in my case. But there was no conversation about that. It was just, you shouldn't do that. Don't do that. And furthermore, it was backed up with him always being late to any of my performances and recitals. But oh my gosh, if we were late to a football game, he was a coach. Then we heard the riot act. So, nice double standard there. But there was a lot. There was just this thing, again, this vibe of not just a lack of love, but a lack of acceptance, a lack of care, a lack of even um, being happy that I exist. I took that to heart. I was already an adopted child. I was adopted at 6 weeks old, had been in foster care for 6 weeks before I was adopted by my family. And I really believe that we adopted kids, adopted people, we have a lot to work through from the get go because we already understand subconsciously, at least I know I'll speak for myself. I understood that I am inconvenient and I was put together through cortisol, through stress, because I guarantee that my birth mom didn't say, "Yay, I'm pregnant." It was probably, "Ah, fuck, I'm pregnant. What am I going to do? Shit." Right? Every day waking up, that's the message that's received by those of us who are conceived um, as a like oops and in a situation where we're not wanted, an unwanted pregnancy. Definitely. Now, I am not saying, okay, so we should just abort all unwanted children. That's the farthest thing from what I'm saying. Just because someone is unwanted in conception doesn't mean that we're not supposed to be here, because we are. We wanted to be here. That's the thing. So, getting through, beginning to understand how deep this stuff runs subconsciously is that's a pretty big thing to understand. And then to see how that whole thing produces an entire life pattern. But it's not just me and it's not just adopted kids. It's any child that has gone through massive hardship. My boyfriend was beat up when he was 4 years old, multiple times. There was a neighbor who the mom is a whack job and told her son, who was, I think, 2 years older than him, definitely bigger, to go and beat up on him. And he did. And I mean, like, really bad. And my boyfriend hadn't even done anything. He's just being a little kid. And that set him on a path too, along with different struggles in his own family with taker, exploiter, manipulator type personality. And so he too ended up as a fawn and had his life dictated by that pattern as well, and went through a ton of struggles as well, and through 32-year marriage that wasn't good. And there's a lot of things that we go through as fawns that really could be avoided. But how can you avoid it if you don't know? That's the problem. Most people have no idea how they ended up with people like that who are willing to run roughshod over them and yet at the same time say, "Oh, how much I love you," even though they are clearly working against us. That doesn't make any sense, and therein lies the whole psychological thing. Someone who says they love you and yet is clearly mistreating you is really psycho. You know? That's not okay. That's not okay. So reading this book was so informative to me, showing me how this life pattern started me on a whole entire way of being that is so very contrary to who I am and to who you are. It's the same life pattern. And now, as adults, is very, very dangerous. It's working entirely against us. It was fabulous. It did a good job of helping us survive childhood and whatever those struggles were. Because, when you have a parent coming home who is ranting and raving, you're going to more than likely run and hide, maybe, or you're going to try to appease. That's just what happens. Rarely do you have kids who really fight back, like right then and there. It's possible, but most people, I believe, are going to be appeasers. They're going to try to diffuse whatever is going on and try to keep some peace and or just disappear. That's a whole nother, that's the flight version. So, there's a lot to it. It's very interesting. It's fascinating, actually. And once you learn it, once you see it, it really reveals a ton of actually hope in reality. That's what it is. It brings so much hope because if I could be conditioned in one way, well, that means that this isn't me as in my person. This is a pattern that is outside of me. So that means that I can change that. I have some control. I can do something about that, which is what I've done. So that's the cool thing. I am living proof that this works. You don't have to be stuck in a pattern that dictates who you end up being with. Y- the fawn pattern puts us on a trajectory where we're subconsciously looking for someone who will also mistreat us. And I know that sounds 100% absurd. 100%. Who does that in their right mind? Well, see, that's the thing. We're not consciously thinking, "Ooh, let me go find a really crappy person to be with again," because we got out of something that wasn't so good, right? But yet, don't we repeat that and get into yet another situation? And on it goes. And some people, very sadly, I know a lot of people who have just chalked it up to, well, I just was dealt a bad hand of cards. My life just sucks. That's just how it is for me. I have a dear friend who I'm not sure is alive now, and he went through so much of this, and he was also adopted, but he went through so much heartache and struggle and I know he had no idea what was behind all of it and that he actually had a way out of it. He actually had a way to make a life that he really wanted, that he would enjoy, that was uplifting, that was full of hope and happiness and fun and excitement. He didn't know. And I couldn't help him at that time because I didn't know yet either. And that's a very sad thing. That's a sad thing for me because I feel guilty. because I couldn't help him. Now I can, if I could find him, if he's still alive. I would love to be able to share all the stuff I've learned now because it's pretty extraordinary and it works. That's the thing. I wouldn't bother sharing something that doesn't work. Like when I'm teaching ballet, I have really good technique. I've learned it really, really well. Foundationally, as a kid growing up, I grew up in a good studio, solid. Wasn't amazing, but it was solid. The studio where I've taught for the last 10 years and now I'm training um, much more with this studio is fantastic. So I was very, very thankful and honored that I get to uh, give my knowledge to those students who are at this studio because it's really important to do something correctly and very well. And I feel like I have the same kind of thing now where I can help other people going through this same exact scenario, stuck in horrible relationships or dealing with a family member or a friend who's really not, but not understanding why they seem to keep showing up. Or we keep walking toward them. Why are we doing this to ourselves, right? But there's an answer to that, and I love sharing that. I love sharing this because it's so important to help other people begin to thrive in their lives and be able to walk away from a whole life pattern that is now not serving them at all. As a matter of fact, is destroying. It's a path of destruction once we hit adulthood. Now we have freedom. Now we have autonomy. Now we have control. Now we have power as adults, which we had none of that as children, but now we do. So, what do we do with that? How do we make that work in our favor without becoming an asshole? That's the real question. Do I still get to be a nice person, a giver, empathic and understanding, patient, kind, helping? Does does that still get to remain? Yes, it sure does. It sure does. The difference is now I am so much more aware of who I give those traits to. Who do I help? Who is worth me saying, you know what, I'll take the time to do that. I have the time so I can. And so, yes, instead of constantly feeling overwhelmed because I don't have the time and I'm saying yes anyway, and I'm totally burnt out, and the person I'm saying yes to more than likely won't appreciate it and will only ask for more instead of reciprocating. And that's the thing, is learning how to find others who you can reciprocate with. Those are safe people who are also kind and giving and empathetic, all those traits that that are nice people. There are plenty of them and they are safe. But we also have to learn how to distinguish and figure out who those people are because I'll tell you what, those manipulators, well, they manipulate. And usually that means dishonesty, deceit of some sort. So again, they're not going to come up to you and say, hey, you know what? I need you to do such and such because I'm an asshole and I don't want to do it myself. And so I need you to do it. They're not going to say that. We might get that vibe, but they're not going to say that. They're going to come with some kind of guilt thing or whatever their tactic is of the manipulation at the moment. They're not going to come flat out and say, do this because I said so. Well, maybe they will, actually. when enough time has passed and you start to see, or they start to let down that guard, then they do start to do things like that, actually. But at the beginning, not so much. At the beginning, they're still trying to ensnare. So they're not going to put themselves as they are out as bait, because no one would want that. Be like, "Go away. You're a piece of crap." You know? But they have a charm, or um, a, "Please help me. I just need your help so much," and blah blah blah. And then, because we are givers and helpers, and then we just jump in, and then we understand, oh, I just jumped into a trap. And usually it takes a seriously long time to figure that out. Um, in my case, a lifetime, 5 decades. So, uh, that's pretty much the discovery I made, again, through Pete Walker, his book Complex PTSD: From Surviving to Thriving. It was incredibly eye-opening, amazing information. The people that he's worked with, their stories, his own story. It's pretty extraordinary to see that I was certainly not alone. So much so that he could write my pattern, and I thought he was talking about me. He was. But there are so many of us that fall into this, that he could describe it pretty easily, it seemed. So we're not alone. We're not alone. That's one thing. But also, the bigger thing is there's a way out of that. And that's huge. When we can come out of something that is hurting us and plain old destroying our lives, making us miserable, and making it very difficult to want to move forward, then, something needs to change. And we have the ability to do that. So, super fun, super exciting, super happy to be able to make this discovery, and now to share it and to help other people make this discovery too. So I will see you again soon. And also, my ebook is out, and I think we'll put that in the stuff after, or like below the video here, so you can check it out. But I give a little synopsis of basically what I went through there, um, the culmination of all of this stuff, what led me to make these big changes, and how I actually did make these big changes. It's amazing. It's so worth it. And I know that it's hard sometimes to go, "Oh, but I have to change something." Well, yeah. I mean, you're not gonna feel the joy and the happiness if you stay where you are. That's just pretty simple. But if you are really interested in being able to make some changes, then check out the ebook. I encourage you, check out the ebook. And then also, um, tomorrow, come back, because we'll talk about this some more. There's why the fawn pattern is so dangerous, but why is the narcissistic pattern even worse? You know, there are some really good details in all of that. And I am more than happy to share what I know now. So I'll see you again soon. Have an awesome day, and go out and find some joy.